In case you just dropped in here, maybe from a YouTube search for how to set Betaflight channel endpoints, or maybe I gave you a link to this video, I hope this video answers the question that you came here to answer. But if you want to learn how to build a quadcopter from start to finish, there's a playlist in the video description, as well as links to all of the gear that I'm working with. And if you want to follow along in that playlist, I think it's a fantastic way to learn how to build a quadcopter for your very first time. Or frankly, even if it's not your first build, there's a lot of information here I bet a lot of you don't know. And that's what we're touching on in this video. Because in a previous video, I showed you how to set your channel endpoints. I told you that here in the Betaflight receiver tab, it's important that when you move your transmitter sticks left and right, they go from 1000 to 2000. And we used the RX range command in the Betaflight CLI to make that happen. Now, it turns out there's actually two ways to solve this problem. And since a goal of this playlist is not just to sort of hold your hand through your very first build, but to actually sort of be like a kind of a masterclass almost on all this information, I wanted to show you there's another way to do it. And in some cases, this is a better way to do it. So what we did is we went into the CLI and we used the RX range command to adjust the endpoints in the flight controller. Now, the reason that's good, and the reason I showed that to you first, is that that works no matter what transmitter you've got. So if you've got a Spectrum or a FlySky or a Jumper or a FreeSky, at the end of the day, the RX range command works for everybody. And it's a lot simpler than trying to make 10 different videos showing you how to adjust the endpoints for every single transmitter. But here's the problem. The RX range command changes the endpoints for this one flight controller. So the next time you build another quad, you're going to need to do it again. And the next time you build another quad, you're going to need to do it again. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a way to adjust those endpoints here on the transmitter so that then the endpoints were just correct and every quad that you build from here on out just has the right endpoints in the beginning and you maybe don't need to think about it again? That's what we're going to do in this video. Now, the downside of this approach is that the technique I'm going to show you is specific. Well, it's not just specific to my Jumper T16. It's the same in all OpenTX radios, because all OpenTX radios kind of had the same menu structure. Some of them have a little bit smaller screen, like if you've got a QX7 or an X9 Lite, the screen is a little bit smaller, and maybe the menus, some of the menus are like nested instead of just being right there on the page. But the fundamental steps I'm going to show you are the same for every OpenTX radio. If you've got like a Spectrum radio or something, you may have to do some Google searching for how to set the endpoints on those other radios. But here's how you do it on the Jumper T16 and other OpenTX radios. Now, the first thing I'm going to need to do is reset this RX range back to the way that it was before I changed it. And it would be super awesome if you could just type like RX range defaults. No, it doesn't work. So we have to just manually set it back. And we're going to do that by typing RX range 0, 1000, 2000. RX range 1, 1000, 2000. RX range 2, 1000, 2000. RX range 3, 1000, 2000. That's how you put it back the way it was. Then we'll type the word save, and it's reset. And we can see here in my receiver tab that I have screwed up the endpoints again. So let's fix them the other way. Here on the radio, I'm going to press, or hold down rather, the model key, and I'm going to page until I get to the outputs screen. And the output screen is where we can adjust these endpoints. So here for channel 1, well, first of all, which one even is channel 1? Let me just move. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look right here. There's a little dash that tells you whether the channel is up or down. You can see it changing here on channel 3 when I move the throttle. So I'm just going to wiggle the sticks and see if I can figure out which one channel 1 is. Okay, so here you can see when I move the roll stick, channel 1, I can see that arrow appear and disappear and move. So channel 1 is the roll channel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the jog wheel and I'm going to scroll over to here where it says -100. And this is the lower endpoint. And I want to adjust that. So I'm going to click the mouse or the jog wheel again. And it's going to flash. And here you can see I can change that from all the way to minus 125. Well, I'm not going to go all the way to minus 125 and all the way up the other way. You may recall that when we first set up this model, you probably don't recall this, I had you turn on an option called extended limits when you first set up the model. If you had not turned on extended limits, you would not be able to go past 100%. Because we did turn on extended limits, we can go all the way to minus 125. Now, we may or may not need to do that. What we're going to do here, it's going to be a little hard to show, but while I've got this flashing, I'm going to hold the stick all the way to the left. And what you see is, in the Betaflight, that the roll channel is at 996. Now, while continuing to hold the stick, I'm going to turn that jog wheel until I get to 1,000. And then I'm going to click the jog wheel one time. And you can see that that has resulted in my lower endpoint for the roll channel at negative 97.5. It doesn't matter what that number is. All that matters is that we have 1,000 when we deflect the stick all the way to the side. Now we're going to do it the other way. We're going to go and we're going to highlight this, which is the upper endpoint. We're going to click the jog wheel one time. We're going to hold the stick all the way to the right, and we can see that we're at 2011. So I'm going to scroll to the left, and I'm going to keep scrolling with that jog wheel until we get down to 2000. And then I'm going to click one time to accept 2000. And we ended up at 97.8. Now, I'm going to do that for all four of the channels: roll, throttle, yaw, and pitch. Yeah, pitch, roll, throttle, and yaw, and all four of the channels. And when I've done that, then I will have endpoints here, and all my channels will be 1000 and 2000. Give me 1 second. I'm going to do that off camera real quick. And when we get done here, you're going to see that the endpoints, the lower endpoints, are all 97.5 for me and 97.8. They may not be exactly the same for you, but I'll bet that you found out that they were all the same for all the channels. And that's, with modern digital receivers and stuff, that's often how it is. Why are they not just right out of the box? FlySky receivers, they're usually just right out of the box. I don't know why with FreeSky receivers they're usually slightly not correct, but there you go. Now that you have made this adjustment on this model, any additional quads that you bind to this model will have their endpoints correct. And that's nice, but for some people that's not actually going to work. Because if you have, for example, if you have a bunch of tiny whoops and they're using D8 protocol receivers, the older D8 protocol, usually the receivers are not consistent between them. So if you set the endpoints for one quad with a D8 receiver, and then you try and fly another quad with that same model, the endpoints won't be correct. So what I'm doing here is I'm giving you the method to have it whichever way works best for you. If you have a modern receiver like FreeSky, FlySky, Crossfire, etc., probably the best thing for you to do is actually to set your endpoints here in the radio, bind all your quads to that same model, and never think about the endpoints again. But if you have older, like D8, or God forbid you have a PPM protocol receiver where the endpoints are not going to be consistent between each quad, it's better to set those endpoints in the flight controller and set it per quad by using the RX range command. There's one more thing you need to do here, and that is set the channel center using the sub trim. And I didn't show you how to do this back when I showed you the RX range command because there isn't a command line way to do this. I wish RX range let you set the center too. There isn't. The only way to do this is to do it here in the radio. And what you want to see is that when you center the stick, the channel is centered at 1500. Now I'm cheating here a little bit because all of my channels all center correctly at 1500, but I'm just going to fake it a little bit by moving the trim switch off center. By the way, you always want your trim switches centered too, but let's pretend that I've got a scenario here where 1485, 1486, the channel is not centered. What I'm going to do is for that channel, let's go down to the pitch channel, which is channel 2. I'm going to adjust that sub trim and pull that, move out of here, mouse. I'm going to pull that back up to 1500. And I'm going to adjust that sub trim to get the channel up to 1500 when the stick is centered. Now, if you have another kind of radio like Spectrum or whatever, again, you'll need to find the sub trim function on your radio. You should also be aware, like I know this is true for Spectrum radios, when you adjust the sub trim, it actually throws your endpoints off. I'm not even sure why it does it this way. But if you need to adjust the subtrim on a Spectrum radio, be aware you may need to go back and recheck your endpoints, and there's kind of a little bit of a back and forth. Fortunately, FreeSky radios don't do that. Once you have the channel centered, you're good. So adjust your endpoints, adjust your subtrims, and now we're ready to move on.